Next up, we see the Watson TV ads all the time. Now we get the real deal. Please welcome Watson himself, Rob Allan of IBM Watson, here to talk about opportunities to reveal hidden insights through machine learning.
Very much. The projector. Thanks so much. Sound okay? This is I consider it a privilege to come back. I was here a year ago, or a little less than a year, and I'm looking at Nick. We came at a time where we had this great technology. We had this Watson, it won Jeopardy, and it's curing cancer, and it's helping to match patients with clinical trials and genome research. It's doing some incredible things in financial services, and if you need to fill out your taxes now, Watson can help you with your taxes. I mean, it can do some really cool stuff, and I stood up here, I think it was the weekend of the USC-UCLA game when we had this, and I was sharing some great ideas and theories, but quite candidly, we didn't really know how it was going to work for supply chain. That was November 2016. We're sharing some ideas, which I thought was a good time. It was just getting out in front of the curve and saying, Watson has some potential here, and we're thinking Watson's like a kid in a candy store with supply chain, with all the data, the unstructured, structured data, building correlations. We were pretty excited about it. But as I look back and critique the messages we gave last November, it was pretty open-ended. In fact, I think we opened up the floor for questions, and one of the questions came up and like, got me. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. Now we're sitting here 10 months later, and I'm pretty excited to be able to tell you some specific ideas we have and things we're trying out in the supply chain that I think will be interesting to you. And I'm not going to, this applies to any artificial intelligence. You heard a great presentation from Google yesterday, and I know there's some other platforms out there that do some cool stuff in machine learning. I'm going to give you my point of view. And with that, there's a perspective. It's always important to know who's the guy that's talking. I have a perspective just like everybody here has. The clinical surgeon Pierre just shared an interesting perspective that I could never come close to approaching. I have a supply chain data perspective. My background, I lead the Watson supply chain offering. So I'm in the Watson brand of IBM. I'm not in the consulting brand or sales. I'm developing a product. And my point of view from 25 years in IBM, and those 25 years include, I led SAP development for a couple of years. If anybody uses SAP in their company, you know how fun a job that was. And SAP is not on the invite list, I don't think so. Okay, I led I2 deployments. I was a consultant for a few years. I'd go to clients and give them architect solutions on supply chain visibility. So it wasn't just IBM, but then the last couple of years, the chief supply chain officer for IBM tapped me to say, can you implement a transparent supply chain project? It was a big data play. We grabbed data from 30 different SAP instances in our warehouse management system, all of our inventory ports, and pulled all this data into a platform so that they could do some clever analytics with it. And that set the foundation for us to start trying out Watson on the IBM supply chain team. We started that last May, and now we're starting to get some fruits of that. And it's very important. I think the premise of Watson is you're not going to see the Watson that's sitting next to Serena Williams in a television commercial a week after you purchase Watson for your supply chain. It's a process, and I'm going to talk about that briefly. Our point of view on how machine learning can help you. And the way I've structured the presentation, I'm going to have 3 slides on supply chain challenges. I'm going to talk about how machine learning looks in supply chain. I have a few examples. Some the clients agreed to let me use their name. Some have not yet given me that permission, so I'll just describe the use case. But it's meant to be a perspective on how what we think are some opportunities to implement Watson and machine learning in the supply chain. And then I have 1 page on my vision for the future. And I have 15 minutes left. Okay, I love that clock. That's awesome. So the manufacturers that are driving the change in supply chain. Oh, one other thing I have to mention before I go into my presentation. If you were here yesterday, you heard the USC marching band share. That's like the highlight of this visit. When I go and I love bands, but it was much more enjoyable last year. I don't know if you noticed that. For you guys that were here yesterday, the tuba player actually sprinted into the crowd and started leaning his tuba over people and playing very loudly. And I was sitting there, he did it to one guy in the back, and I'm thinking, what are the odds? There's no way he's going to hit me. I mean, there's like 300 people here. He got me. And so if you ask me a question, you may get this dull blank stare because I just can't hear anymore. I heard some people, mouths moving. Anyway, so on to the presentation. Many factors are driving the need for change. The point of this slide is that if you're sitting still right now in supply chain, you're probably going to be in trouble. You have to be looking at, there's factors that are driving the need for you to start looking ahead at what can I do to be more competitive. And I just threw up some of the classic things we know. Customer centricity. IBM is really into the retail space, trying to figure out ways to help retail providers do better. They're demanding multi-channel. I can't wait to hear the presentation, the panel this afternoon on multi-channel fulfillment and disruptive technologies. The panel yesterday was spot on with all the things that are going on with implementing blockchain and Watson, and closer alignment with your suppliers is required. Those changes are crucial to drive you to start investing in improving your supply chain. And I made this point down here that it's not my fact. I think I may have stole it from Gartner with permission from Gartner. I think I got permission from Gartner. The amount of high-value data that is worth analyzing will double by 2020. So the whole theme of this presentation is how can we help you through machine learning manage all that dark data we're going to talk about. And so, what happened to my thing there? What's on the minds of supply chain leaders? We talk a lot. I've talked to about 100 clients and say, what's probably driving you? We always start with the cost part of the formula. We cannot get anyone to invest a penny in a supply chain solution unless they see the benefit of that. We can build a business case for that. So a lot of what we've done in the last 10 months is we've started to explain and show examples of how IBM has benefited from that and how some of our early adopters are benefiting from trying out Watson. So cost, helping to drive that reduction and give a return on your investment. Visibility, they're saying we have to be able to see what's going on with our product. Answer the question when a customer calls up, where's my order? Or more and more what you heard in blockchain, we're getting into this, can you tell me what was the original source? We're involved in some dairy supply chains where they want to know exactly what cow was milked to get to that cheese and end product. So we're getting into visibility and then the ability to sense, predict, respond to disruptions. That's what's on their mind. So we're trying to say, so that's what our point of view is. These are the things that are challenging them. And some of the data we pulled together is 80% of all data is siloed, dark, or unstructured. And dark is another Gartner term. That's just data that you have, but you're not able to leverage it. You're not able to take advantage of it and use it for your benefit. And unstructured, all of us supply chain people, I spent 20 years working on supply chain applications. It's all very structured data. It's in tables. We're starting to add to the equation all of this unstructured data, the things outside of your supply chain ERPs and your supply chain transactional systems. That's 80% of that data. If you're able to take advantage of that and use it to your benefit, that's a big challenge that we're hoping to overcome. 84% of chief supply chain officers report lack of visibility is their biggest challenge. 87% say it makes it difficult to predict and proactively manage disruptions. So the whole theme of the next set of slides is how do we help you predict, manage disruptions, get better visibility of data, make better decisions. And this is a simple graphic that I'll sort of explain it to you. We are building our artificial intelligence in IBM and for clients that has this process to first collect the structured data. We're pulling data into this cognitive analytics cloud, and then we're merging it with a whole set of unstructured data and starting to look for correlations. What are some things that may contribute to help you anticipate, understand, things that you never would have predicted before. We're starting to do this process to merge all this external data, internal data into the cloud and let an artificial intelligence engine start looking for correlations and then help score the importance of that answer. So that's the flow. It's just starting to explain the structure of we're pulling in a lot of data and starting to look for correlations. And so, I think everybody in this room has probably already seen this chart or something like that, but I'd like to start here to explain what's different with cognitive. And I spent 20 years of my life on that bottom left box. I'd come home and I'd tell my kids what I did, and they're like, well, that's really boring. It's just, what happened? Describing what happened in the supply chain, looking at all the purchase order data, the customer order data, the inventory status, and being able to get a visibility to that. That's just descriptive analytics. That's supply chain analytics 101. Then we're starting to look into some cool stuff where what are factors that help you to predict, to anticipate these situations, learning over the span of months, these factors are contributing to that issue happening. And weather, I'm going to keep bringing up weather because you may or may not have heard this, but IBM made what I thought was a pretty interesting purchase. Like, we purchased the weather company. And so the weather company getting access to all that data, we've been playing around with that to say, what can weather do on your supply chain? And we're finding, it's like we've just scratched the tip of the iceberg of all the things. I mean, if you think about weather, it's blizzards, right? We know blizzards have a dramatic effect on runs to the grocery store for milk. I mean, that's an obvious one. But we're starting to look at simple things like thunder will shut down an airport for 3 hours, and that may impact that last mile shipment. So we're looking at anticipating thunder, ground stops. We're looking at traffic congestion. We're looking at partnering with some of the carriers to come up with some other ideas. What are some other data pieces we can start bringing in to predict? Let me grab a quick drink of water here. Prescriptive. I had all of our IBM customers, they were saying, you have to be able to start telling me what to do. And that's going to be a theme too, is you're starting to build this story. You see this thread. Describe the situation, predict it, and now tell what to do. Watson sees that behavior and starts learning from that. You score Watson's advice, and it gives better and better answers to help prescribe. And that leads to this cognitive approach that I get to this chart to say, cognitive systems, they understand the world through sensing, interaction, natural language, so natural language processing, being able to exchange your language in terms that Watson can understand. That's important. And I love the Domino's example. One of my toughest clients says, you keep telling me I have to type into your digital playbook for Watson to ingest information. Why can't I just talk into it like Domino's? I mean, is Domino's that much more technologically advanced than you? But we're going to get there. Right now, we're creating digital playbooks. That's a record of how you handle events. It senses that. It learns from that information and experience and brings back better and better answers. Cognitive is where you are adding more and more information to this body of knowledge that Watson's learning from, and when you can help score its answers, and it gets smarter and smarter. I like this chart to talk about how the progress we've made since last November. We started figuring out how do we start giving Watson knowledge to start drawing from to give you better and better answers. And when we started this with the healthcare, there was this process where they had to hire hospitals. We engaged in contracts with the Sloan Kettering and the Mayo Clinic and MD Anderson, and they helped to teach us the language of healthcare. Now we're trying to figure out how do we teach Watson the language of supply chain. And so we've been, over the last 10 months, focusing on getting information so that Watson starts to have this reference of material to draw from. World knowledge is a simple one. We've connected it with weather information. We've connected it with information on traffic. We've connected it with information on what's the definition of raw materials, where do you get raw materials. We've been teaching it a little bit about the world. And then we started to move into the really fun stuff is we're teaching Watson supply chain. I mean, this is a simple example that I typically start with in our conversations is how do you tell Watson what the difference is between part NUMBER and part hashtag or part NO? And we're going through this with trial and error, making sure Watson can extract that type of information to be able to read the language of supply chain. And we had this idea we wanted to pick the best supply chain reference text and just ingest it. Just like it reads digital material, can read PDFs, it can read tables, ingest it so that Watson reads, I don't know, some of these USC business schools under Nick, what's the best reference material on supply chain? And just in the span of about 2 days, Watson can ingest that and now maybe make a B- in Nick's Supply Chain 101 class. That was supposed to be a joke. I didn't really work that well. So we're teaching Watson some general information on supply chain. It's simple things like, Watson, how do you calculate inventory turnover? What are the alternatives to drive inventory down at specific ports? What happens if a supplier decommits on supply? What are the potential options? We're teaching Watson general information on supply chain. So the way we are developing our interface for our prototype for Watson and supply chain, it's Q&A. You ask a question, it answers. It answers with a percentage confidence. And you have the ability to give a thumbs up or thumbs down or write an answer to say, you missed it there. And so our initial trial users love that. They get this answer back that Watson's 78% confidence, like, wait a minute, I know more than Watson. I'm going to teach Watson a little bit about supply chain. They like that process. We're also heading the direction to teach Watson industry-specific information. We realize our strength is we've tried this out with a manufacturing supply chain. IBM manufactures mainframe Z systems, storage devices, power, computers, and we're good at manufacturing. So we're trying out, we think Watson knows a lot about the manufacturing industry, but we want to partner with folks to help learn CPG, retail, food and beverage. We don't want Watson to answer the question with perspective of manufacturing, and we've found a few early adopters are willing to help us teach that. And one final thing is we have a proprietary instance of Watson for each company, because we've been talking a lot to the automotive space, and the first question they ask is, if I'm going to be teaching Watson supply chain, will my competitor benefit from that? Is it this one big entity that's Watson that it's going to get smarter and smarter, and I'll get in the ground floor and I'll be teaching it and they'll benefit from us? That's not the way we're setting it up, is we have a proprietary with company information. Now, I won't go through this chart, but it's just the premise of this is we've flowed out how we start with that Q&A pairs. We document it. We collect some Q&A samples. We have this feedback loop. And then with each week that goes by, Watson's able to give more and more accurate answers and expand its base. If you ask a question like, who's going to win the World Series in 2017, it's not going to know the answer to that. Well, you guys in LA probably know the answer to that, but but Watson won't. And so it just says, I'm sorry, I don't know an answer to that. Can you give me more information? We're trying to expand it where it tries, and it's going to try any question you ask other than baseball predictions, it's going to try some answers. Then you score it on that. So really quick on IoT, I brought this in because we are partnering with our IoT sensors to be able to embed some various use cases to get more data for Watson to do some things with. And I had a few examples of that with a few clients that said, we like the way this is progressing. You may have seen the commercial where Watson's helping with Cone and predicting when to maintain an elevator. The elevator guy shows up and says, you weren't expected today. Well, Watson told me to show up. It's because it's monitoring sensor details from that elevator to say, you need to accelerate your preventive maintenance. And we're trying some things out with Honeywell and with Kuvala Innovation in the Netherlands that are all associated with getting different types of data. Kuvala is giving us some blockchain data that we're pulling in, and Watson's able to interpret that and provide some advice on what's a better route to ship based on blockchain input. We're trying to be an open architecture to take data from any source, be able to make some sense out of it. And then I don't have permission to share the specific client use cases on the Watson, but these are areas that I think resonate with almost everybody in the room. We're trying out a lot of inbound supply use cases where the challenge here is our clients do not want to be surprised by something that they're expecting to show up at their dock, and if it's late to any degree, it impacts their supply chain. So they're asking us to start looking at what are all the external factors, can you help predict? and learn from how do we prevent late shipments. And we're looking at all sorts of cool things related to, obviously, weather, looking at supplier performance. Are they trending up or down? Are we seeing something going on with the supplier's situation? Are they about to go through a merger and acquisition? All these things are types of things we're starting to monitor. We're crawling through the digital universe, retrieving information to predict impacts to inbound supply. Demand planning is a cool one. We're trying out a pilot with a very large retailer that wants us to help predict when they're having, at a SKU level for each of their storefronts, tell us what are the things that are, oh, it's blinking at me. I'm going to wrap it up, Kristen. That's so. It's making a face to say, if you don't get off the stage in 3 minutes, no, I'm teasing it. That was a very threatening time warning, Chrislyn. Demand planning, we're looking at, I was sharing with the Warehouse Exchange Party last night some ideas about some of the factors we're bringing to the table for this client that predicts Gatorade consumption. You know, we were able to bring 25% improvement in Gatorade consumption prediction because we were looking at the scheduling of parties, because who knew Gatorade is the #1 source for hangover. I don't know why I'm going there, Wink. Don't use that, okay? Order fulfillment. We're looking at complex orders. You know, the whole process of if there's parent orders, child orders, lining those up. What are the factors that go into a complex order being late? And then logistics is our really wheelhouse to start looking at some things related to what are all the factors going on to optimizing the routes? Is there an opportunity to reroute and get a better cost rate? So my last slide, supply chain at your fingertips is our vision. We're anticipating having you sitting there and looking at your global supply chain, and Watson's able to digest, look at your preferences, start monitoring. You're teaching Watson supply chain. It's able to ingest external data. It's able to combine all of your sources of information from your MRP, your systems of records, pull it in, compare it with external factors, and present to you in a digestible format the answers you need to predict. We're very excited about the future. I can't wait to see where it's going to be in 12 months. In 9 months, we've just figured out so many things about how to apply cognitive to the supply chain. In another 12 months, we're going to be so much further along. I can't wait to share that journey with you. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, just messing with your listening things, the hearing thing going on there, sorry. Well, good, now I can fast forward through the ads on TV now that I've had that presentation, so appreciate it. But I gotta tell you, on the Jeopardy thing, I was rooting for Ken Jennings. I love that guy. But I'm getting to love Watson too, by the way. He's kind of growing on me.